This scary story is about a group of young people having a class reunion party at a luxurious villa which was located far away from the city. That day, Jindo was accompanied to the party by Ron. This was the first time they saw each other since graduation. Everyone was curious about who had reserved this luxurious resort. Being able to throw a party like this one, that person must be really wealthy. As the two arrived at the place, they saw Kathy waiting for them outside. Back in the days, Kathy was the most beautiful girl in the class. She was currently leading a model career and had made a name for herself. As the three got inside, they encountered Khan, who was also waiting for them. Seeing his old friends, Khan spoke in a sarcastic manner. "Hello, losers! Still leading a poor life, huh? Why didn't you inform me about your arrival earlier so I could send one of my chauffeurs to pick you guys up?" Ron was a hot-tempered guy. Feeling unbearable to hold in his emotion, he clapped back at Khan. He grabbed Khan by the collar, threatened to beat him up. But Jindo had stopped them from getting into a fight. Thanks to him, the class reunion after 3 years wouldn't become a disaster. Kathy expressed her amazement as Khan and Ron coincidentally picked the same room. This could be an opportunity for the two to put aside their hatred and get along with each other. Although Ron still bared animosity towards Khan, he gave in as he didn't want to ruin the upcoming party. He walked up to Kathy and took the key room from her in an aggressive manner. Before the party finally began by noon, everyone had an hour to rearrange their stuff in their room. At 10:30 noon, everyone had gathered at the main hall. Jindo took a few steps down the stairs. As he was about to begin the party, he heard the crowd talking loudly. It turned out that everyone was asking about Khan since they didn't see him anywhere. The same to Ron, as he still hadn't come to the party. Kathy had tried to reach out to them, but none of them picked up the phone. Since the party could only be started with enough guests, Kathy, Jindo and some other people went to Ron and Khan's room to check. They knocked the door multiple times, but no one answered. They even saw blood coming out of the door. Fearing something bad had happened to the two, Jindo broke down the door and went inside. As soon as they got in, they saw Ron facing his back at them. He was standing there looking out of the window. They called his name, but he didn't bother to reply. When the group turned their gaze on the floor, their faces became darkened as they looked terrified. There was a pool of blood on the floor. A terrifying scene appeared before their eyes. It was Khan. The man had stopped breathing. His face was covered with deep cuts, eyes dilated with horror. Everyone froze by the horrifying scene. They trembled with fear. Only Jindo was still calm enough to ask Ron a question. Did you kill Khan?" Ron reacted instantly to Jindo's question. He panicked and howled loudly, saying he wasn't the one that killed Khan. He kept saying that he had seen a puppet at the window. It was the puppet that strangled Khan to death, then escaped through the window. Ron claimed his innocence by climbing out of the window searching for the puppet. He jumped out of the window, then made his way to a nearby forest to everyone's surprise. Luckily, the room was at the second story of the house, so Ron wouldn't suffer from any injuries by jumping. Later, Jindo, Kathy and some of their friends had to delay the party as they had to go to the forest looking for Ron. The atmosphere now in the forest was gloomy and eerie. Every breath of cold wind sent chills down their spines. As they made it halfway through the forest, they finally found Ron kneeling next to an old tree. Beside him was a wooden puppet wearing a white bloody dress that looked extremely scary. Ron gazed at the puppet while muttering something under his breath. "Who are you? Why did you kill Khan? Is it you, Lil? Yes, it's you. It is you. You want to seek revenge, don't you?" Everyone felt strange about his actions. Why was he muttering like that? And why was the doll here? Ron appeared to be truly terrified as he recalled something. To him, this was definitely an act of vengeance, and soon all of them would be killed. You must be wondering who Lil was. She had died 3 years before, and her death had a lot to do with some male students in her class. The disturbing memories of high school was brought back as Ron felt an awful pain in his head. He grabbed it and then fell onto the ground. Jindo suddenly spoke up. "It's clear that Ron has killed Khan. We need to take him to the police." Even though everyone found Ron acting strange, they did what Jindo told them to do anyway. As they were capturing Ron, one of them pulled out their phone to report the incident to the police. But since there was no signal, no one from the group could make a phone call. As a murder had taken place and Ron was their prime suspect, the group had no other choice but to cancel the whole party. But first, they needed to get out of this forest. As soon as they returned to the villa, they encountered a bizarre incident. Even when they had left the forest, there was still no signal. Moreover, all of the cars had been smashed and none of them was working. Everyone was totally bewildered about the situation, but Jindo still remained calm. He told everyone to get back inside the villa and lock the doors tightly. For Ron, he could be locked alone in a room for the sake of everyone's safety. They all felt warily after getting back from the forest. The murderer was still a mystery since Rod had been with them all the time in the forest, so the true killer might have been hiding somewhere else. Kathy told everyone to get inside and find something to eat, then find a way later. As they were having their meals downstairs, Kathy brought some food to Ron. However, Ron didn't open the door despite Kathy calling him multiple times. Sensing something bad had happened, Kathy opened the door and walked inside. The door wasn't locked. No sooner had she walked into the room than her face instantly changed color. Ron had died the same way Khan did, his eyes wide open, face covered with deep cuts. Kathy was horrified. She collapsed on the ground and screamed loudly. The people downstairs quickly rushed to check. The strange thing was, Kathy's description of the situation just sounded like that of Ron when they asked him about Khan's death. She pointed at the room window, saying there was a puppet and Ron was killed at its hands, but it seemed like Kathy was the only one seeing that spooky puppet, which panicked her, of course. She tightly grabbed Jindo by the shoulder and said she wasn't the one that killed Ron. But who could believe such an absurd story? How could a puppet take down a human being? Everyone felt suspicious about her. As they were still in shock, Jindo suddenly howled loudly, saying Kathy was the one that killed Ron, and assumed she had ordered Ron to kill Khan previously as the two were accomplices. It was unknown why Jindo was trying to make everyone believe Kathy was the murderer. Everyone gradually believed him. From what was shown at the crime scene, Kathy was the prime suspect, not to mention that she was the one away while they were having meals downstairs. Kathy was helpless to defend herself. The world seemingly collapsed before her eyes. Right that moment, someone in the group suddenly screamed as they turned around. Ron's body was being moved to the door, which came as a great shock to the witnesses. Feeling like her actions had been exonerated, Kathy looked at everyone and asked if they were still suspecting her. Then she rushed to the door and grabbed the spooky puppet. Kathy said the puppet had been at the forest, but now it was here at the room, which was extremely odd. Therefore, the puppet was the real killer. The group started believing her, except Jindo. He still insisted that Kathy was lying to cover up her crimes, but the rest of the group were no longer bothered about him. One of them pointed at the puppet and said, It's Lol, it's definitely her." Kathy was dumbfounded as she tried to bring back her old memories. Her face quickly changed color as she remembered something. In the past, it was Kathy that spread false rumors about Lol, which caused her to commit suicide. All of a sudden, the lights in the room were off. It looked like someone had deliberately turned them off. The group started searching for flashlights in a tumult of confusion. How terrifying! Under the dim light, the puppet started jumping around, and there was Kathy laying on the ground next to its legs. She had stopped breathing and her face was covered with deep cuts. Everyone instantly panicked. They ran out of the room. One of them quickly closed the door. A party that was supposed to be a class reunion now turned into a massacre. Everyone ran out of the villa in horror. They had no idea what was going on, but they had to run to ensure their safety. As the group had made it out of the house, they found out that Jindo had mysteriously disappeared. They were sure that he was running in front of them, but now he was nowhere to be seen. A man fearfully said perhaps Jindo was being kept by the puppet, and he was still inside the villa. Right that moment, another man pointed at someone that appeared to be Jindo. Jindo was standing there only a few steps away from the main door, yet he didn't move. The freaky puppet appeared behind Jindo. Everyone was scared and extremely worried about Jindo. But Jindo showed no fear. He smirked and let out an evil smile. Then he bursted out laughing. "Have you guys already forgotten this woman?" he said. "How could you forget Lil after causing her death?" Lil was their classmate back in high school, who was also the one that Jindo secretly loved. The girl with the petite appearance had to suffer such cruel fate. That day the class decided to throw a party as they had finished the midterm exam. Lil was raped by some of her male classmates. Jindo was also there at the party, but he was too drunk to get there and save her in time. Later rumors about the incident were spreading. Lil was humiliated by Jindo's still love for her, as he even confessed his love to the girl. But things got worse for Lil as she couldn't stand the humiliation and the way people gossiped about her every time she went to school. Therefore, Lil chose death to end her days of suffering. She took her own life by hanging herself in front of the school gate. Jindo was in immense pain when he found out about her death. Unexpectedly, he had an encounter with a mysterious man who had an X logo on his chest. The man gave him a jar of paint which could bring someone's soul to life. Jindo made a wooden puppet from the trunk where Lil had committed suicide, then applied the paint onto it so Lil's soul could be absorbed into the object. The party was part of his plan to take revenge on those who had harmed Lil. Unexpectedly, Jindo had been living with the puppet for a while, and no one could ever expect that he would pull out such vengeful acts towards his old friends. Jindo hugged the puppet in his arms and shouted, "Those who harmed you are all here. Let's kill all of them." As Jindo finished this sentence, the puppet flew in midair and made a dash to the crowd. Before they could run for their lives, the strings from the wooden puppet instantly caught them, then squeezed them all to death. As Jindo finally satisfied his desire for revenge, he wanted to complete his last wish. Jindo looked at the wooden puppet. He asked Jill to forgive him and let him be by her side, as he wanted to make it up to her and take care of her. Now before his eyes wasn't a demonic puppet smeared with blood. Instead, it was a pretty girl with sparkling eyes. Because of his true love for Jill, Jindo vowed to be turned into a wooden puppet with his soul trapped inside, just like Lil. Only that way could he stay with her forever. I'm Anne, a sophomore high school student. I happen to possess a spooky album, and according to the instructions written in it, I had to pass a curse onto one of my closest friends. Otherwise, I would be in deep trouble. Her name was Diana, a truly close friend of mine. I remembered that day when I was at her house. I asked her if she would forgive me when I did something bad to her. Dana smiled and told me that she always trusted me. She had no idea that I had brought that album with me and chosen her to be the cursed pink rabbit. Did the album possess great magic? At that moment, I was really curious about it. After the unfinished conversation with Diana, I said goodbye to her. Before leaving, I told her to be careful with her hands, as I had already known what was going to happen to her. Diana was so confused. She couldn't figure out the reason why I told her to be careful while she was being at home. As I had already left, Diana suddenly wanted to go to the balcony to get some fresh air. However, as soon as she slided the grill sliding door to the side, a loud scream was let out, sounding piercingly. It turned out that while she was trying to slide the door, she accidentally got a long cut in the hand by a piece of iron metal. Fortunately, the cut wasn't so deep, so it only needed to be bandaged and would heal quickly. Aside from the wind, the first thing that came to her mind was the warning that I gave her before I left. Was it just coincidence? That morning, as usual, Diana said goodbye to her mom and went to school. I assumed that my close friend would take the bus to school, so I picked up the phone and called her. I tried to act normally. I said good morning to her and reminded her to come see me at the canteen for breakfast. Seeing Diana not having any doubt, I got straight to the point. I told her to get someone to drive her to school, as the bus we used to take wouldn't arrive. That day, I found out that the album had a picture of a serious car accident, and the bus in it was actually the one that Diana usually took. I had no idea what terrible thing would happen, so I made a call to my friend in order to stop her from taking the bus. But it seemed like all my efforts had become meaningless, as it was impossible to change the future. After taking my call, Diana felt really equivocal. 15 minutes later, she still took the bus, number 115, to school as usual. Diana got herself a good seat, which was next to the windows. That made her feel happy and quickly forget about the call between me and her, and also my awkwardness. Feeling worried about my friend, I constantly called her, and luckily, Diana picked up the phone. I tried to run my bike as fast as I could to the bus station to stop her from taking the bus, but it was too late. Seeing the bus already left, I quickly chased after it. I shouted and told Diana to get off the bus immediately or something bad would happen to her, but Diana seemingly didn't care about my warning. She was in fact surprised with my strange behavior. Suddenly, a truck lost control and crashed into the bus. A peaceful, quiet morning quickly got destroyed by an extremely loud noise, as I was behind witnessing everything. I couldn't stop being worried about Diana. The crash was so bad that it made both ends of the bus completely disfigured. Even the driver was unconscious, as his head was strongly hit to the front. The people from both sides of the street quickly rushed out to see as they heard the noise and extremely panicked. I rode my bike closer to the scene, tried to wriggle my way through the crowd looking for Diana. How terrifying it was, Diana. The upper half of her body was hanging off the side of the bus through a broken window. The impact of the crash must be enormous. The thing was, Diana was in a posture that looked exactly like how it did in the photo. I couldn't hold back my tears when I saw her, but I didn't regret for what I had done, because it would be even more terrible for me if I was the one that had to go through those tragedies. The album that I was keeping with me was a spooky one. The one that possessed it had to go through 7 tragedies in a row. But there was an exception. If one wrote down the name of their closest friend of the album, then the tragedies would happen to them, not the owner. And I had cowardly wrote down Diana to keep myself safe. You must be wondering how I had the album. Well, I accidentally clicked on a mysterious website. Then a man dressed in black, who was someone from the X organization, came to see me and gave me the album. Of course, I didn't tell my friend about it and acted like I didn't know. Still, I secretly helped my friend avoid those tragedies, but it was seemingly meaningless. Fortunately, Diana had survived the accident, as her injuries weren't critical, but she started to feel suspicious of me. Diana asked me why I lied to her about not taking the bus, and if I had already known about the accident. But what could I do aside from being silent? And my silence immediately made her angry. It was also my first time seeing her being that furious. She had found out that I was hiding a secret from her. As Diana was constantly asking me, I knew that I could no longer hide my secret, so I decided to reveal my secret to her, but just half of it. I told Diana about the spooky album, and told her that it could predict the tragedies that one had to suffer. I also said that the album predicted that Diana had to go through 7 tragedies in that month. Thanks to the album, I had known early about the wound in Diana's hand and the accident. That was why I tried to stop her from taking the bus, and it was my explanation to Diana about everything. Diana was surprised as she listened to me explaining everything to her, just like how I received the album and found out about its magic. I needed to help Diana get out of this, not because she asked me to help her, but it was me causing her to be in this trouble, so I thought it was my responsibility to finish this. Since that day, we called each other more often, so I could keep her updated on the misfortunes that would happen to her. Every 5 or 7 days, the album showed a picture, and my job was to quickly report it to Diana so she could avoid it. That day, there was a picture of a pink teddy bear with a wound on its knee appeared on the album, so I had to tell my friend to be careful with her knee. Diana did what I told her to, and everything was still fine until she got out of school. As Diana was outside the school gate and about to be driven to home by a chauffeur, she suddenly heard a shot from behind her. As Diana was still unable to react, a strange man wearing a blue coat accidentally bumped her. She was immediately thrown to the side. Her knees hit the edge of a wall. However, as she had already been warned about the incident, the wound on her knee wasn't as serious as it was in the album. But another picture quickly appeared after that, and I was unable to inform her about it in time. It seemed like I couldn't change the outcome of what had been drawn in the album. As soon as Diana hit her knee against the wall, a vicious dog rushed to her and bit her right at where she just got hit. As a result, the wound had become serious. Not just that, the misfortunes just kept coming at Diana no matter how hard I tried to change them. A few days later, as the wound was still in the healing process, Diana was stabbed in the face by pieces of glass from a door. And when she was finally discharged from the hospital, from a high floor, a flower pot fell onto her head as soon as she stepped out of the gate. Since then, Diana's mood was getting worse. She was always locked herself in a room, not communicating with anyone. Diana thought that if she stayed at home, nothing bad would happen to her, but she was wrong. Even Diana herself couldn't understand why those misfortunes just kept coming at her. She didn't know how to avoid them, and the only thing she could do was to cry. That day, as soon as another picture popped up, I immediately called Diana to get out of her room quickly. Diana was shocked, as she was under the impression that her room was the safest place for her. But not only her, I was also surprised to see the last picture popped up in that spooky album. The picture showed that Diana would be trapped in a fire right in her room while her leg was still injured. Realizing how serious this tragedy could be, I tried my best to comfort Diana and told her I would drive her to her home and pick her up. But Diana wasn't in the mood for those meaningless words. She sat on the ground with bewilderment and an empty head. She started to feel like she was dying slowly with these constant tortures. Diana sat in the corner, knowing that it was impossible to avoid the misfortune of happening to her, no matter how hard she tried to do it. And it was exactly like what was showed in the picture. A small candle suddenly fell next to a power plug. But before it caught fire, Diana suddenly changed her mind as she couldn't just sit and wait for her death to come. She decided to leave the house and went to a distant place to keep her safe. But the picture in the album started to change. Diana's house didn't burn down, yet the fire happened at the place she was about to go out. But the moment I came to her house, I realized it was too late, as Diana had already left. The place she went to was an old house located far away from the city, and Diana went to the tallest floor in the hope of avoiding the fire. However, from outside, a strange man had thrown something into the house. I quickly took out my phone and called Diana, telling her to go home as soon as possible. But Diana no longer trusted me, as she was immediately angry at me. If I were her, I wouldn't believe what I said either. However, while Diana was talking to me on the phone, a black smoke was spreading all over. It turned out that it was because of the man throwing a cigarette that caused the fire. Without any doubt, it was truly happening. Diana was terrified and panicked when she saw the fire under her feet. Like a reflex response, she scarcely stopped backward. Diana was terrified. No matter where she's been to, she would never escape the misfortunes that would happen to her. Unfortunately, as she stepped back, she stumbled on a rock and fell off the railing, then landed on the ground. At that moment, the only thing I could hear was a scream through the phone. I repeatedly called out her name in fear. At that moment, Diana was trying her best to crawl out of the fire. She painfully reached to her phone. Diana was way tougher than I thought. With a little bit of strength left, she told me the location of where she was at. As I and her family arrived at the location, we found herself being unconscious with one of her legs being broken. Luckily, we had arrived in time and saved her. After 5 days being in a coma, Diana finally awoke. At that time, she was not just a friend to me, but my savior. But I didn't have enough courage to tell her the truth. Instead, I tried to go to the hospital as many times as I could, took care of her and talked to her. It was fortunate that the curse had been lifted, and Diana had survived till the end. Otherwise, I would have to live miserably for the rest of my life. But I couldn't keep the secret with me forever. As I left the hospital, I accidentally left behind the album, and Diana found out about it. At the moment she looked at it, she immediately knew that it was the album with magic that I had told her before. The outside of the album made her feel curious. There were 2 rabbits on the cover. One was healthy, one was full of injuries, and behind them was a heart that got split in half. Out of curiosity, Diana opened the album. Despite having known about it, she was still surprised to see the pictures that showed what she had gone through. It was even stranger that every place on the album that originally had my name on it was replaced with Diana. But Diana still didn't have any doubt until she turned to the last page and read the instructions of how to use it and also its curse. Diana had found out about the truth that I was trying to hide from her, and it was that I had replaced my name with hers so I could keep myself safe. The moment she closed the album was also the moment I got back. I asked Diana if she had known about everything, but Diana was really calm. She said that she didn't blame me for what had happened. However, she wanted to have the album. The protagonist of this story is a female primary teacher named Jang, and this is the most mischievous boy in the class. One day, during the exam, he was caught cheating by Jang. However, as the boy was being questioned by his teacher, he still strongly denied the accusations, saying that he had accidentally left the book under the desk and had no intention of cheating. Of course, Jang had witnessed him cheating but still wanted to give him a chance to admit his wrongdoing. But the boy was so stubborn that made her lose her patience. No matter what she said to him, the boy still insisted not admitting his mistakes. But there was also something strange about her. As most of the teachers at school usually wore short sleeves, collar shirts and formal skirts, Jang was always seen wearing long pants and a tight neck shirt. At that time, the heat made her become even more angry. Jang kept fanning, but the sweat was heavily pouring down. A while later, the boy finally admitted himself cheating on the exam, but felt no remorse. He even blamed her for ignoring the other students who also cheated yet not being caught. Jang couldn't hold in her emotions as she heard what the boy had said to her. She slammed a hand on the table, which made the kids startled. It was the first time he had seen her being this angry. However, Jang tried to calm down and slowly explained to the boy as she didn't want him to become the same person who she had been before. Let's go back 10 years ago when Jang was still a high school student. Her academic results was neither outstanding nor even good. Actually, it was pretty bad. However, she didn't care much about her study. That day the whole class had to take an important test, yet Jang hadn't even bothered to review for it. Jin told Jang to cram up a bit for the test, but her attitude was still indifferent, as confidently said that she would pass it despite not studying at all. Then Jang turned around and asked a male student who was sitting behind her to help her with the test. Besides Jin, the boy also had a good academic record and was secretly having a crush on Jin. Just like that, Jang had taken advantage of him many times. Usually after finishing his test, the boy would write down all the answers on a small sheet of paper and give it to her. However, that day, as the exam was going on, the math teacher quickly noticed the strange behavior of the two students. The teacher was well known for his strictness towards the students. As he caught Jang cheating on the test, he immediately asked her to go to the outside exam room. Jang was originally a very stubborn girl. As she was asked to go out of the room, not only did she feel ashamed or apologetic for her wrongdoing, but she also got angry. She stood up and slammed her hands on the table, then shouted that she hadn't cheated while staring at him. She also expressed her anger to him as she was walking out of the classroom. She cursed at him, then intended to skip her remaining classes of the day and go home, playing computer games. As she was on her way home, being furious, she accidentally bumped into a woman who was walking in the opposite direction. The woman, wearing a black outfit with an X sign in front of her, reached to help her up and asked if Jang was okay. However, Jang was not so polite to her as she refused to grab her hand, then walked away cursing the woman. But the woman seemed not to be too upset about it, as she asked Jang if she was being kicked out of the classroom for cheating on a test. Jang was completely frozen as she heard no surprising question. She had no idea how the woman could know about it. Not giving Jang any time to figure out what was going on, the woman gave her a tape, telling her to use it the next time she wanted to cheat, as it would help her easily control someone just by writing down her wishes on the tape. Then the mysterious woman quickly walked away, yet did not forget to tell her not to overuse the tape if she did not want to get into trouble later. As Jang was holding the sticky tape in her hand, she couldn't hide the bewilderment on her face. She wasn't sure if the tape was as magical as what the woman had told her. The next day, as the whole class had taken another exam, Jang decided to try out the tape. She let out a confident smile. Before the exam gets started, Jang wrote a line on the tape, "Please do the exam for me, Jin," and then stuck it onto her arm. As the exam progressed, Jang was as if sitting on a fire. She waited anxiously, yet not seeing any sign of the tape working. This time, the seats of the students were mixed, so she couldn't count on anyone to help her. However, right after that, from behind, Jin suddenly appeared a thin black arm. The arm was small but somehow really strong. In the blink of an eye, it grabbed Jin's arm, which caused her not being able to move as she wanted to. Then she was slowly being hypnotized and controlled by an invisible power. It looked like the tape had shown its magic as the hideous black arm controlled Jin to cross out her name in the exam paper and replaced it with Jang. And it seemed like no one was able to see the black arm. Even Jin was having her memories erased as she completely had no idea she was being controlled. The bell rang out as the exam had ended. Everyone shook their heads in disappointment as the test was too difficult. Jang, having handed her empty exam paper, was really worried too. However, the anxiety was quickly relieved as Jang had earned maximum score for the test, which definitely shook her classmates. Jim also felt strange about it, but it wasn't Jang who made her feel that way. She couldn't understand how her exam paper was empty. Besides, she was also having a pain in her wrists. Having regained her composure, she walked up to Jang and asked her to borrow her answer sheet, since she was thinking that the teacher could have made a mistake. Jang turned around and calmly looked at Jin, yet frowned as if she was having something on her mind. A while later, Jang spoke up. She accused Jin of being jealous to her as she got higher score in the presence of her classmates. Of course, Jin wasn't that kind of person. However, she couldn't justify her actions due to her timid and shy personality. Then, she had to apologize to Jang despite knowing that it wasn't her fault. However, aside from those who idolized Jang for her beauty and defended her, there were also other classmates who admired Jin and believed that Jang had cheated. The disregard of her friends made Jang furious. She issued a challenge to Jang to take part in something that was beyond everyone's imagination, to sign up for the school's mathematics team for the Olympic National Mathematics Competition. She even affirmed with confidence that she would be Jin to be the one selected for the team. Finally, the day for choosing members for the Olympic mathematics team had arrived. Jang had written down, "Please help me do the test, Jin," on the tape, then stuck it onto her. Once again, Jin was being controlled and unconsciously replaced her name with Jang in the exam paper. A week later, the results were announced, and Jang was at the top of the list. This wasn't something out of her expectation, yet still came as a shock to everyone, including her classmates and teachers. Now Jang could finally show her arrogant attitude to Jin and those who had despised her. At that moment, the exultation was clearly shown on her face. However, contrary to Jang's joyfulness, Jin was extremely disappointed about herself. For her, being in the National Olympic team was the only way to help her receive a scholarship. Jang and Jin had been friends for years. Jang also knew how important it was to Jin to be in the national team, so she refused to take part in it and offered the opportunity to her friend. However, Jang's actions didn't help her gain any admiration from her friends. They criticized her for acting like a celebrity who had the chance to be in the school's mathematics team yet turned it down. As the national examination was just a few months away, Jin decided to ask Jang to study for the upcoming test together. However, Jang refused the offer. Part of the reason was her not being interested in studying, and another part was the gossips about her from the students in school made her no longer want to be involved with Jin. Just like that, the beautiful friendship between Jang and Jin had ended ever since. A few months later, the most important exam had finally arrived. While everyone had gone to the school to do their procedures for the exam, Jang still didn't know anything about it. At that moment, she was still calmly playing games. In just a few months, the tapes had already covered most parts of her body. It even got to the point when Jang had to wear long sleeves and long pants every day, no matter how hot the weather days was, just to avoid the tapes being seen by others. Despite being terrible at studying, Jang was pretty good at playing games. However, she was still far from being compared to the top gamers. At that time, Jang just wanted rank higher on this game's tournament. Perhaps it would be unnecessary to tell you what Jang had done to get the position she wanted. Yes, she had used a cheating sticky tape again. She had used it to make the top gamers help her achieve her goal. However, there were still many better gamers vying for the position, but she didn't have any information about those people to write it down on the tape. This made Jang extremely angry, but didn't know what to do about it. However, her anger immediately evaporated as she read a friend's comments in the game. Jang panicked to realize that today was the day of the important university exam, so she immediately rushed to the school in the hope of taking the exam in time. However, she had once again used the cheating tape to fraudulently swap the exam papers and easily get accepted to one of the most prestigious universities in the country without having to take the exam. And again, Jin was being the victim. That also meant Jin had failed to pass the exam. However, Jang didn't feel guilty for it at all. She even flaunted her fraudulent achievements to others. And since that day, Jin's life was like being covered by a black night as she became more reserved and taciturn. Meanwhile, it was quite easy for Jang to adapt to the university learning environment. For Jin, she didn't easily give up as she once again decided to take the exam. Being too dependent on the cheating tape, Jang kept abusing it to pass the exams at her university. Soon, all over her body was covered with words. It wasn't exaggerating to say that aside from her face, there wasn't any part of her body that could be stuck with the tape. However, Jang didn't care much about it as she was living the happiest days in her life with everyone admiring her. Having graduated from university, many people had asked Jang to work at their companies, but she all turned it down. With the magical sticky tape, she was under the impression that it would help her to choose the best place to work. And the people from the company that Jang believed was most suitable for her had finally appeared and asked her to come for an interview. Since the company was an international one, its employee selection process was very strict. No matter how excellent a candidate was, they all had to go through special tests, and Jang wasn't an exception. Jang was really excited for this new beginning, so the next day Jang came to the company to apply for the job and take the test. As she arrived at the company, she saw many candidates gathering at the interview room. These people were believed to be gifted, outstanding individuals coming from all over the world. Jang was a little bit anxious, as she wasn't sure if the sticky tape could help her overcome these people. Right at that moment, Jang saw Jin, who was also there to apply for the job. Jang, holding the sticky tape in her hands while praying that she would succeed in getting the job despite being worried, she truly didn't want to give up on such an amazing job like this one. However, at that moment, something terrible happened to her. It was unknown why her whole body was aching all over, and somehow became so heavy as if she was carrying dozens of dumbbells on her. She dropped the sticky tape onto the ground. This might be a side effect of using the tape too often. It was also the first time Jang had suddenly become worried about the warnings of the mysterious woman whom she had met many years ago. At that moment, it would be extremely dangerous for her to use the tape again. Suddenly, someone from the company walked out and announced to candidates that the employee selection process had officially begun. Having no choice left, Jang had to walk into the room and take the test with her heavy body. Of course, the test was filled with questions that were extremely difficult for her. The room was also equipped with cameras. Anyone intended to cheat on the test would easily be exposed. And at that moment, Jang was so scared that she didn't dare to use the tape. So she decided to use her phone to cheat. However, the alarm bell placed next to the camera suddenly rang out. It looked like Jang had been caught cheating. The man who asked Jang to take the test now became the one who asked her to go out of the room in a voice that couldn't get colder. However, her personality didn't change much over the years. As soon as she was caught cheating on the test, she immediately denied it, and even expressed her anger as if she was unfairly blamed. The serious and professional atmosphere inside the room immediately got ruined by her. As everyone in the room was all eyes on her, Jang immediately thought of using the sticky tape again. In a moment of anger, she decided to risk everything, writing a line on the tape, then stuck it on her forehead since there wasn't any other space left on her body but her face. Jin, sitting beside her, had witnessed everything. However, as Jin was yet unable to react to it, she was quickly controlled by the black arms. Not only Jin, but also the remaining people in the room, including the recruiter, were being hypnotized as he constantly repeated, "Jang is not cheating." And just like that, Jang was able to keep on doing the test while others were being controlled by the invisible arms and therefore unable to finish it. Even though the results were still announced, yet everyone could tell that Jang had certainly been chosen for the job as she had the highest score. After that day, dozens of people seemed to have lost part of their memories, as they were bewildered, unsure of how they didn't finish the test but still unable to figure out what had happened to them. Jin, having witnessed the strange behaviors of Jang, immediately ran after and questioned her as she had also constantly been the victim of that spooky tape. She didn't expect the one who used to be her close friend could do such things to her, but Jang could still directly look at Jin. The eyes brazenly told Jin that she was too naive to be robbed of everything. Despite eventually being chosen to work for the company, what happened later were truly uneasy for her. Wherever she'd been to, Jang always caught people gossiping about herself. There were many rumors about her being hired because of her relationships with people in the company, while others said that she wasn't talented at all. Since there was no space left on her body, Jang could no longer use the tape to cheat, and working as an assistant director wasn't an easy job. With the amount of knowledge that she had, it was certain that Jang was unable to do complicated projects. The board of managers was furious with her competence, and just like that, Jang was fired from her job after just 3 days. It was at that moment she realized how terrible and pathetic she was. At the end of the day, those who work hard and never cheated are always the winners. Despite going through many difficulties, Jin still kept moving forward with her own strength. She was quickly hired by another reputable company and was driven to work every day by luxurious cars. Now Jang had nothing left with her, no home, no job, no general knowledge. Seeing how successful Jin had become and then looked back at her, Jang couldn't hold back her emotions. She bursted into tears. It seemed like she had finally realized how dangerous the cheating tape was. However, Jang didn't give up as she tried to start all over again. Little by little, rebuilt her life. She decided to study hard and fulfill her wish of becoming a teacher. The mischievous boy, having listened to his teacher's story, immediately expressed a curiosity on his face. The boy asked her if the sticky tape was real. Jang reached to the cup of water. She stood up, walked around while answering the boy's question, but she didn't expect that it had caused the boy to have a bad intention with him. He tried to distract Jang by constantly asking her, then sneakily opened the box on the table and took away tape. And Jang completely had no idea about it, as she was thinking her story might help the kid understand the negative consequences of cheating. When Jang turned around, she saw the mischievous boy was rushing away. She immediately panicked, as if she had discovered something. On the table was left with an empty box. The cheating sticky tape had disappeared. Will the boy go down on the same path like Jang and become someone who cheats to get everything he wants?